All right, so we decided to host the session in English because we know there are quite some attendees that they come from abroad. They then cancel their flights and they decide to join us this week, so we thought that it would be nice to host the session in English and be as inclusive as possible. So, well, we are super happy to be here today. Actually, I'm honored to be hosting a session, a conversation with two thought leaders on innovation and entrepreneurship. And I'm going to introduce them right away, briefly. But before that, I would like to ask you, we want to know who is on the room. Who are you also? So if maybe the technicians can show us the link. There is a website. You can go and you can pull up your phones now. Let's see if that's working. No? Yeah, OK. So in any case, have your phones ready. You will go to menti.com. You can already do that, menti.com. And as you do that, there is a code. You introduce the code. And please let us know a little bit who you are. But from our side, so basically, we have Alfons Cornella. Alfons Cornella has been working for some 25 years in the field of innovation. He has been working with over 120 innovation projects in companies. He's a very prolific writer. He wrote around 30 books. Is that right?
32.
32 books, so over 30 books. And the latest is called How to Innovate Without Being Google. And actually, this is a very hands-on manual that any practitioner should have on his or her desk because it's full of tools and advice. Also with us, we have Xavier Ferràs. Xavier has also a long history in innovation and entrepreneurship. First in the public institutions in Acció, running the innovation unit there, and lately in Esade Business School, where he's working at the Department of Operations, Innovations, and Data Science. Moreover, Xavier is typically enlightening us with his thoughts, either through his own website or regularly in newspapers like in La Vanguardia. About myself, I'm Oriol Pascual. I run IQS Tech Factory. We are a hub for industrial entrepreneurship. We give support to hardware startups, and we help them industrialize. We help them manufacture. But let me take a look. So, wow. So basically, we have a big chunk of entrepreneurs in the room, some corporates and some academia, and a small representation of government and investors. I'm sure this is also useful for yourself to know who you have next to you. So the title of the session aims to be a bit provocative. Beyond Tech Ventures, Opportunities in Industrial Entrepreneurship. And that's because digitalization has brought many opportunities and new business models that have disrupted traditional business. The relevance of digital ventures is undubtable. We have now tools that are almost at very low cost that allow us to develop that. And we can test and validate hypotheses very quickly. This has led to a boom of the so-called tech ventures. In fact, typically what we hear is that entrepreneurship is very much connected to this kind of tech ventures that they are more service-based, and they have on digitalization the core of their value proposition. So actually, I would like to ask another question to the audience, is when you hear the concept tech ventures, what is coming to your mind? Can you please send us some words so we can understand what is in the common mindset under the word tech ventures? And this is actually the question I would like to start with. I would like to ask both Xavier and Alfons. In fact, I would like to ask, are all ventures born equal? Is the same a SaaS-based startup, a service-based startup, than a health startup or an industrial or science-based startup? Xavier, please.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me here. I don't think so. I think that there are many different kinds of ventures. And in fact, it depends on the perspective. So if you are an entrepreneur, for sure, you have to catch up the best opportunity. and try to scale it up and to gain the maximum level of funds and so on, right? So there's no difference from the entrepreneurial perspective. The only question is to detect the opportunity, to convert this opportunity in a real business, and to follow a set of, I would say, steps in order to obtain the maximum success in the market. I am very concerned, in general terms, with the country level, the nation level. But for me, this is not the same to have a set of service companies or a set of industrial companies. What I can explain to you, because this is my research area, what I have written for a long time, is in general terms, first mover nations have a strong industry base and also a strong research base. And from this platform of knowledge, a lot of startups emerge. Deep tech startups, also service startups and so on. But as a previous, I would say, step is, or at least as a not disconnect step, we need a platform of knowledge, a platform of industry, and from this platform, we can create even better entrepreneurial opportunities.
Alfons, what's your take on?
Well, my opinion is that working? Yeah. My opinion is that I really love ventures that are based on industrial products, much more than soft products. And the main reason is because the industry or the product thing generates problems that have to be solved in different ways. So I see industry as a problem generator. I mean, if you are a handyman and you like to do tinkering with your hands, you realize that when you try to do something, a new problem appears that has to be solved, and that this brings to another problem. Obviously, this is the same thing in the software industry, but I think what's the most relevant and interesting thing of products, factual, physical things, is like they generate problems that have to be solved in different disciplines. So you may have a problem that is related to materials, that is related to chemicals, that is related to finance, to whatever. So startups based on physical products are, in my opinion, much more, I will say, startup generators than startups based just on software. And on the second idea, at the national level, there is one thing that something has been written about this, and there is not much discussion. I will bet that in the next years there will be a discussion on that. Is that some people say that the only way to generate a middle-class economy is through industry. I mean, you cannot generate a society with a middle class just with high top-level services. We cannot. I mean, not everybody is ready to have those high skills to develop software or artificial intelligence or whatever. So on top you have this, down is just personal services, but in the middle is industry. So I understand that robots will do a lot of jobs there, but my concern is that I really love startups based on industrial products because they contribute to the sustainable society in terms of a middle class.
So it seems, picking up on what you're saying now, so it seems that it makes sense as a region, as a country, to invest in industrial entrepreneurship.
Well, I mean, this is the China bet. I mean, this is what China is doing. Obviously, China is doing a lot on finance. I was there last summer. Maybe tomorrow I'm explaining something about this. But I mean, you go to Hong Kong and it's plenty of fintech things. But if you go to mainland China, what you find is companies developing this and that are merely products that are able to generate millions of jobs. So I understand that we have to take into account the social component of any venturing, and in my opinion, industrial startups are more able to generate these possibilities, these jobs, than service-based companies.
I'm still with the idea of that you were saying that industrial startups create problems, and that is been creating some problem in mind, because
no, they generate new problems that you have to solve.
That you need to solve.
And I say materials, chemicals, engineering, telecommunications. So any single thing that you do, this table generates a lot of things that have to be solved with different knowledge in your mind. So combining a lot of different capabilities, and I love that.
And that generates new opportunities. But Xavier, you want to say?
Yeah, I wanted to reinforce the idea of Alfons that there is no, all economic evidence says that there is no possibility of building a strong middle class without industry and without research. And when you compare yourself, you must compare yourself with others in terms of international standards. If you go to international standards, the most important parameter in innovation, whether it lies to you or not, but this is true, is R&D over GDP. How much a country is investing in R&D over GDP. This is my obsession, because we are not investing so much. We have a very, very powerful entrepreneurial spirit and a powerful entrepreneurial examples, but our economy, in general terms, is not investing as should be in terms of R&D over GDP. If you see who are the leaders, Finland, Israel, United States, now China is catching up in the United States. Maybe in 10 years, China will invest half of the whole R&D in the world. It will be a superpower. China is investing in terms of artificial intelligence, the state of China, $100,000 million in order to prepare the country for the arrival of artificial intelligence. So this is not a market question. So it's a myth. This is not a market question. Market will create new things once the market has the knowledge platform already built. But this is not only a market question. It's a tech push question first, and then entrepreneurship will come if things goes correctly, in order to create a nation according to the standards that is considered a competitive nation.
So picking up on what you're saying, so what we know is that strong economies are those in which the industrial sector play a key role in national GDP.
For instance, a couple of weeks ago, Bloomberg declared Germany the most innovative country in the world. Based on what? Number of patents, number of scientific publications, density of high-tech industries, small and medium enterprises, innovation capabilities, and so on. So basically, industrial or research factors.
Let me say on top of that if you go again to the Chinese case, what is interesting there is that if they do something on artificial intelligence, it's not that for the sake of it. It's artificial intelligence for something, which is for cars, for airplanes, for whatever. So on this combination of the industry as we have it, and whatever technology you can put on top of that, this product of both capabilities are generating this wonderful, powerful economy in China. So I think it's both things. I'm not saying that just manufacture tables, but anything you put smart in front of the word means industrial startups.
Right, well, sorry.
Yeah, and we have all the ingredients for the recipe. So we are very privileged here in Catalonia because we have a strong industrial tradition. We have a very, very good research. The level of research is absolutely excellent. We have an entrepreneurial spirit that is completely renewed. And also we have art and gastronomy and all good weather and a very, very beautiful city. So everything is here. The only thing we have to do is connect it.
That's, well, actually, you've been answering already many of the questions that I had, but building up on what we were saying before, so strong economies are those in which industrial sector plays a key role. The way to enlarge the contribution of industry in GDP will be either existing companies are producing more and selling more, industrial companies, or we generate new companies.
That's right.
So what we're in the focus now is on how do we generate new industrial companies? We heard examples about China, Israel, and Finland. So what are the ingredients to create an ecosystem, and Germany, that is a generator of industrial startups? So investment on R&D from both public, national level, and probably also private is a key ingredient. But what will be other ingredients to make that possible?
I think there's also a myth that both levels of investment are independent. This is not true. So it depends on how the public administration is investing, the private sector will invest or not. So they are not independent variables. So you can multiplicate your investment, your public investment, if you orient, for instance, what happened in the United States, in my opinion. This is only my opinion, but this is what I see. It is not true that Silicon Valley is a spontaneous thing. No, it's not true. There were a set of economists in the States that said that you shouldn't touch the markets because the markets are perfect. while it was happening, and this kind of guys was spreading ideology all around the world, the American engineers were building rockets to go to the moon funded by the state. And it pulls all the industry and creates the technological industrial capabilities and then export to the civil sector. So this is completely true, that public and private investment are independent. Public investment will mobilize or not private investment. So we need intelligent public investment. It's one of the ingredients. The other ingredient, of course, is connection. And now what is happening, and I think it's a very, very good news, for instance, is how corporates are starting to be connected to startups. You are doing a very, very good job in this way. So management starts to understand how to innovate from the outside with startups, for instance.
Right.
And I think, again, we have the ingredients. The only thing we have to do is to connect everything.
And what's your experience? You've been in China, so how is this industrial development taking place there?
Well, Xavier is the expert on that, so he knows much more about that. But my feeling is that we are lacking something here that is very relevant, and I just made it up a term for that, which is synergetic contagion. So contagio sinérgico. So what I've seen in other parts of the world is that there is big dreams. So the idea is we have to do that. I mean, it's impossible. The more impossible, the better, right? So we have to do it. So we mobilize everybody in order to achieve that. And this contagion, I've seen that in China. It's like Nanjing. We want to be the builder of all these airships for the future. So they don't produce very good airships right now. They will do it in 10 years' time. Why? Because there is a big dream and everybody's piggybacking on the idea. So what I think is lacking in Europe, not here, in Europe, is big dreaming and mobilizing all the agents in order to do that. And at a local level, you have to detect the possibilities that you have based on your assets. For instance, we have sun, solar energy, we have sea, sea-based food, we have whatever. So the idea is be very pragmatic and build a big dream that mobilizes absolutely everybody. That's the only way we will compete with China.
So imagine that we are buying the idea. We are buying the dream. We believe ourselves that yes, we can become a reference in industrial entrepreneurship because the ingredients are there. Xavier mentioned that. So how do we compete, or what is the value proposition that we may have versus, let's say, Shenzhen? So what do we have, what is our contribution or differentiating factor?
Nowadays, what we have is basic science. Cheaper basic science than the US. That's the reality. So my opinion is that we have still an advantage, which is very good research teams or centers, as Xavier said, that are able to do top-of-the-line research cheaper than in other parts of the world. Obviously rather than Israel, Sweden or whatever. So that's something that we have. If we could combine these basic research capabilities with the industry that we still have, with some public money, the combination will be, I think, very fruitful. But we have to put real money into that. So we have to put very relevant sizes of the investment, because otherwise, I mean, we better don't start.
I'm going to pick up on the money issue, but to close, that's what happens when you let
Laundry.
people openly mention things. I think, Satisfyer, that's the crazy one. Laundry, I have the feeling that someone from Girbau is in the room and is being hijacking the Menti, but when we hear about tech ventures, we think about innovation, technology, startups, agile, opportunity, risk.
But actually, I love the laundry thing because it's an example. I mean, everybody is washing, things. So we need to be the best laundry makers of the world.
We have one of the two best in the world in here, so that's why it's in the center of the stage. But let me. So please, if you want to ask some questions to the participants, you can do that using the same system. So just send questions here. We're going to review them, and then we can tell to the audience. But Xavier, I thought you wanted to say
I wanted to add that apart of those ingredients that I mentioned before, we have specific capacities in some things. For instance, maybe laundry, I don't know, right? But here in Catalonia, we have specific capacities, for instance, in in biotech. We have an incredible biotech industry. Because we have a society that asks for a very good medical service and for health, and we have sophisticated demand, but we have the ecosystem. We are very good also in mobile communication with the Mobile World Congress, for instance. We have flagships. We have a supercomputer now. So we have a lot of specific capacities around which entrepreneurial activity should appear. Right? Should appear if I would like that it happen, right? But look that this kind of innovation is not coming from the market. So there was no people with banners in the streets, we want internet. No, there was a tech push movement. There was a scientific idea that was injected in the market. So this kind of disruptive innovation doesn't come from the market. It's the same with the supercomputer. We have the good luck that the European Commission will fund us a new supercomputer, will be one of the best in the world, and so on here in Barcelona. So it's a tech push movement. It's disruptive innovation. There are no people with banners for that. Our mission is to achieve that in the medium and long term. We have a semiconductor cluster around the supercomputer, and also entrepreneurial activity around the supercomputer. And then the innovation policy and the innovation system will work properly.
Right. Let me say something, because I think it's maybe useful too, is that there is one thing that we don't have in Europe, and is the capability to tell the people the truth. It's a paradox, but the truth is that we are missing the point. So we cannot compete in many levels with some countries in Asia. So people should know that we are in an emergency, and we have, not much time to react to this thing. And I mean, the more people understand this, the better. I was shocked in China to see, for instance, that the social network is very limited. I mean, health, pensions, whatever. Education maybe is not in this basket. But, so they don't have this social network. Being a communist country, we have a wonderful social network, but they have this incredible investment in the future that maybe we cannot afford because we have a very relevant social network. I'm not saying to kill it, but the reality is that sometime in the future, this will be a trade-off. What do we want? To have jobs or to have this social network? I'm not saying that I'm for this, but this will be a question in the next years. And the Chinese are absolutely clear that what they want is to develop the economy, whatever the cost.
Right. Actually, before we go to, we have lots of questions. That's quite incredible. But before we go there, I want to pick up on the money issue. Because for a couple of reasons. One is that, so we do help industrial startups to go from a functional prototype, so we are talking TRL 4 and 5, so validated technologies, proprietary technologies, to go from that stage to industrialize. And there is an authentic lack of funding for that. So at least here in our country, in our region, there is quite some funding to go from an idea to validated technology, to go from initial lab to a first functional prototype. Public money, competitive instruments, and also even some private. But when it's about industrializing, there are no fundings. There's no fund, there is nothing public. And about private, there's nothing really well structured. In fact, there are the corporates that we heard before, the examples, which through their innovation budgets or through their corporate innovation units, they are funding in a not very well organized way these ventures. We know that in other places like Israel and Finland and so on, there are public funds. So basically the state owns a venture fund in which they're investing. So I know that Xavier has been looking quite into that. Yeah. So what are the opportunities, or does it make sense to do this here?
For sure, it must be done. It must be done. In my sessions, in my classes, I usually make an exercise as dividing the groups in two parts, and I make them compete, developing a different business plan each one of the groups. I show a picture to the first group, and the picture is a pizza. And I say, develop a business plan around this concept, a pizza. The other group, I show them a microprocessor. They develop a business concept around a microprocessor. When they come back, and the simulation is that they have to compete for my funding, the pizza business plan is quite perfect. It's very accurately, they can calculate finance at 5 years, to control the cost, to know everything, there is no risk in the supply chain, so they always win. Instead, the guys with the microprocessor has no a single client initially, at the moment zero. They have no suppliers. They do not control the processes. They do not know the cost. So they have much more risk. So private funding will go to pizzas. Me, as a citizen, I want my public funding to go to microprocessors, not to pizzas. They are not independent things. So pizzas will appear in the market, but I would say public sector must do these kind of things. The subdivision appear. Right? So it must be done.
Actually, this is, sorry.
No, if I may add something in terms of money, I will say that obviously money is a problem, but there is another problem that I see even more complex, which is the size of the European market. So the idea is, if I were asked by the European Innovation Council, where Anna is right now, about a very simple thing to do, what I will say is that it is critical that we generate something to merge European startups that do the same. So you find one startup in Finland, one in Italy, one in Greece, doing exactly the same thing. So it is mandatory to connect those startups to achieve a relevant size in the European market as compared to the US market or the Chinese market.
This is industrial policy. This is public action.
But you know, done not just with projects, but merging. So the idea is it does not make any sense to have in Barcelona one startup doing something that is done at the same time in Croatia or in Lithuania. I think this is critical. It is a problem of money, but it's a problem of the size of the market.
Right.
If we don't have the size of the market, Chinese will have it.
We are too fragmented. Just because we are coming to an end of the session, but definitely I want to get one question from the audience, and it's very much connected to what you were talking, which is about risk. So how do you overcome aversion to risk? That's a classic question, but especially in such ventures where risk is so big compared to the service base. So do you have any suggestion for that?
First of all, I think, again, this is a myth that in other countries, in other cultures, there is less aversion to risk. There are studies that say everyone is more or less equal averse to risk. The only question is whether you have more incentives or not to do several things. It depends on the size of the market. For instance, it depends on the public support that you receive. So if you create the institutional framework and the kind of market that you need, then probably your risk will be reduced. But in natural terms, everyone has more or less the same risk here, or in the States, or in China.
Right. Any input?
My opinion is that this will come. This will come as we become less competitive in the world. So Europe will be much risk-oriented because there is no other way. So it's not a matter of culture, it's not a matter of policies, it's a matter of reality. If we don't move, we are done. So in my opinion, in the next 5-10 years, there will be such a revolution in the European science and technology marketplace because of China that there will be no other way than to risk ourselves to death.
Well, with those strong words, we are going to close this session. So in a way to summarize it, so what we saw is that there are more new ventures than just tech ventures or service-based ventures. Industrial entrepreneurship really brings opportunities. It seems there is a strong potential to develop the industrial entrepreneurship ecosystem, especially in our region. We heard the ingredients are there. It's about organizing properly the ingredients and also about thinking big. Alfons was pointing to that. Also, money plays a key issue. Maybe that's a way to reduce the risk, and that's the role of the administration also to minimize the risk on those phases that is more risk by funding those. So, well, thank you very much, Xavier, and thank you very much, Alfons, for coming here today. If that is a subject that is of your interest, if you bought into the idea that there is lots of potential in industrial entrepreneurship, tomorrow morning we're going to be hosting a session just about that, just about how do we make Catalonia a hub for industrial entrepreneurships. And we invited players from the entire ecosystem in order to align those interests and see if we can make it possible. So hope to see you here tomorrow morning. Thank you very much, and hope that you enjoy the evening. Thanks.
Thank you.